Welcome to True Wellness with Dr. D, the podcast where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. D, and each week I'll bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of True Wellness with Dr. D. I bet you're all wondering, what on earth does flying an airplane have to do with your health and wellness? And we're going to put that together for you today because I promise you it does. I am pleased to welcome Captain Jeremy Stoker, who is joining us today and going to share with us how do we navigate. So I don't know how many of you are moms with sons out there, or how many of you are in relationships in general with other people. That makes everybody. And we are going to talk about how we actually navigate those relationships and how we can make our lives easier, smoother, calmer, less stressed, all the things that improve our wellness by taking those lessons that come from the cockpit. So welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to do this. This is exciting.
Yes.
I'm curious how we're going to put this together too.
Awesome. Well, it's all just a conversation, right, you guys?
Yeah.
You're all listening in. And I know there's lots of tips and tricks and things that you'll glean from today's episode. So I know Jeremy. So first of all, Jeremy has a company that works with teenage boys. And I know that because my boys are in his program. For those of you who don't know, I have 2 teenage sons. And when I learned about Jeremy's program, I was like, I want my boys in there, because not only is it about providing them with a good role model and providing them the opportunity to navigate their own lives in their own way, but it's really about what I know Jeremy to stand for. And that is that love, that connection, that authenticity that really is about bringing families together, opening up those communication pathways. All of these things are really important. I mean, Jeremy, I want you to share with us, I've heard your TEDx talk, and I know that you've got, just from being a pilot, you've come across with this methodology that helps us all remember how we can actually get through tough situations, not just our teenage boys, but all of us as adults, right? Because, I mean, there's no shortage of tough events that occur in life.
No, they seem to never end.
The roller coaster, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it put together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In my TEDx, I discussed the 3 principles that we use to fly airplanes. The first one is Aviate. That means we're going to take control of the airplane. We're going to make sure we're watching that airplane above all other else. We're not getting distracted. The next thing is Navigate. We got to know where we are, where we're going, and how we're going to safely get there. And then the last thing we focus on is Communicate, which is sharing the right information with the right people at the right time. And we do that all day, every day, while we're just flying the plane on a normal, beautiful day. But when it really kicks in is when we're having emergencies. And I've handled literally dozens of emergency situations now. I've been flying planes for 30 years, 10,000 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Stuff happens. And most of the time, passengers in the back, I don't want to scare anyone, but, stuff happens. Passenger back, they never know. We don't need to tell you, hey, we're dealing with emergency up here. Put down your books and scream, please. That doesn't help anybody. We're just dealing with emergency. We land safely. We get to the gate. Everyone gets off. And then we fill out a report and explain what happened. So, and it's not common. I want to think like, oh, emergencies are always happening. But when they do happen on those rare occasions, we use these 3 principles: Aviate, Navigate, and Communicate in those precise orders. Those are our priorities.
I love that. I know every time I get on a plane, I'm always like, is Jeremy in the cockpit? Is he flying the airplane?
I just flew a friend of mine out to San Antonio just a couple of weeks ago, so you never know.
That's funny.
It happens.
I haven't seen you yet. But let's talk a little bit more about that, because I think, especially in today's world and society, we've gotten so wrapped up in being distracted by all sorts of things. We've forgotten how to connect with human beings. And I find so often that even small things in life for some people have come to the point where they create such anxiety and feel so unmanageable that they end up, working themselves into this anxiety or even panic pattern. And I have clients who talk about these things all the time. They'll come in and there's like this thing, whatever that thing is for them, whether it's a relationship or it's something that's happening in their lives. And they almost feel trapped by what's occurring.
Yeah. Been there. I felt that. I completely understand that. I don't want anyone to think like, oh, he's a pilot. He's always calm and things always go right. Like, no, things happen. We're really good at staying calm in those critical moments, but that doesn't mean in everyday life, I don't experience anxiety. I'm married. Adrian's, 23 years. Been married now, 3 kids, got a mortgage, got 3 cars, got, stuff happens. And, I've had health problems. I've had a major back surgery. There's anxiety and stuff in there. The peak of my anxiety, I would dare say I was depressed. I didn't go see anyone get like clinically diagnosed as depressed, but I was depressed. I didn't want to do anything. And it was about 2 years out of college. I had this dream to become a pilot ever since I was 7 years old. I'd been pursuing that dream. I went to this the world-renowned aviation university, got my pilot training, and then 9/11 happened.
Ah, yes.
And everything just came to a grinding stop. And I was angry, and I was bitter, and this isn't fair. I'd done everything right, and there's no pilot jobs out there. And so I sell cars. I'm selling cell phones. I work at Target. I clean pools. I do all these just menial jobs, each one getting worse and worse and worse as I feel worse and worse about myself. As that anxiety builds, as that depression builds, I'm not even good enough to be a car salesman. Like, these guys are better than me. I should quit. So I quit that. And then I go to the next job. Well, these guys are selling more cell phones than me. So I can't even do this right. I need to find another job. So I end up doing night stock at Target. And that's a pretty dark place for a guy with $150,000 in student loans debt and a commercial pilot license to be working next to some people who didn't even graduate from high school.
Yes.
And I feel like these are my peers. So anxiety was up to here. Depression was up to here. And then I came across an infomercial from Tony Robbins.
Okay.
Yeah. This is where it gets kind of silly. I'm watching that infomercial. He has this Get the Life, or not Get the Life. I'm forgetting the name of it now. Anyway, he has this program, Get the Edge program. Okay. And he's just bombarding it with these midnight 3 a.m. infomercials. And I'm working night stock on Target, so my days off are actually nights off. So I'm watching TV and I'm watching his infomercial over and over and over again. And I'm watching it to make fun of the people that think that this program is going to fix their life. And I'm literally mocking them in my mind, sometimes out loud, alone as my wife sleeps in the other room. Like, these stupid people, they'll believe and do anything. But for some reason, I keep watching it over and over until I finally order it. I probably watched the infomercial 20 times. And one of the first things Tony says when you get started that program is, you got to get grateful. And when he said that, I was like, screw you, Tony.
Yeah.
Screw you. Because just prior to this, my mom had passed away from cancer.
Okay.
So I got this loan debt. I'm working night stock at Target next to people who don't even have a high school degree. And my mom spent the previous 5 years fighting pancreatic cancer, which, as you know, is not that there's a nice cancer, but that one's a super painful, aggressive one. She didn't go out in a good way. It was a very slow, painful death for her.
Yeah.
So I'm very angry and bitter and resentful.
Yeah.
And then he says, get grateful. And I'm like, screw you. I get grateful. I got nothing to be grateful for. And I'm listening to a CD. I remember when we had CDs. And he says, He totally puts me in my spot. You know, he's not even there. I'm like, holy cow, is he listening? He's like, come on, there's always something to be grateful. No matter how bad it is, there's always something to be grateful for. And I'm like, wow, he literally just called me out. And the first thing came to my mind was the sunshine. I was living in Phoenix at the time. I grew up in Seattle. And I'm like, fine, I'm grateful for the sunshine.
Yes.
That's it. Like, that's all I could be grateful for that day. Like, fine, I found something. And then, you know, I felt the hot Phoenix sun on my face, and I kind of looked up at it and closed my eyes and felt that heat. And I just felt this rush of gratitude come over me in that moment. And I'm grateful for my mom. I'm grateful for my wife.
Yes.
I'm grateful for that stupid yellow lab. Just is always happy to see me when I come home. Zeke, he's a great dog. I'm grateful for my dad, who's still alive, and the time I do have with him. And I'm grateful for the time I did have with my mom. I'm only 26 years old. I've lost my mom. Like, that doesn't seem fair. She's never going to meet my kids. She's barely met my wife. In fact, that was her goal. When she's diagnosed the second time with cancer, she's like, I just want to make it to your wedding, Jeremy. I just want to make it. And she made it to the wedding and died a few months after that.
Oh.
So I'm grateful for my college degree and that I have a pilot license. All these things I started to be grateful for. And I realized I got it pretty good.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the resentment and bitterness, I realized that those were like blinders, that I wasn't seeing the good stuff. And it wasn't just like, hey, it's great to know your good stuff. But now I'm realizing I have a lot of resources.
Yeah.
I have a college degree. I am a good pilot. I have a wonderful wife who supports me. And I quit Target that night. It wasn't like, let me think about that. Like, I quit that night and I began researching little small pilot schools around the Phoenix area and visiting them the next day until I found one that seemed like a good fit. They were relatively affordable. I resumed my pilot training. You know, I'd been flying for a couple of years. I'd get back up to speed. And again, pilot industry is real slow at that point. It's a couple of years after 9/11. And they couldn't offer me a pilot job, but they said, hey, you want to answer the phone at the front desk? Well below what I'm qualified for. Well below. You know, I have this degree from this prestigious university and this training from this prestigious university. No one else in this building, these other 12 employees, have that. Not even the chief pilots, as prestigiously educated as I am. And yet when he said, would you like to answer the phone? I'm like, yeah, thank you. Absolutely. And the ironic thing is I was making the same money answering that phone that I was making at Target. It's $8 an hour.
Yes.
And I was grateful for that job. And I did that job to the best of my ability and showed up on time, stayed late, did extra stuff. And then when a pilot job did come up, they're like, Jeremy, we want to offer you a pilot job. And I took it. And then from there, went on flying small jets at a regional airline, flew private jets. And now I'm at a major airline flying, 200 passenger airplanes.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to that moment when I decided to be grateful.
I love
that's when the anxiety, that's when the depression didn't go away, but we hit bottom and we started to climb our way up and I started to see the resources that are around me.
Yeah, I love that. And I love something that you said. You said it was the resentment and the bitterness that were like blinders. Because you think about how many times in our lives we feel like we're just stuck in this little hole. And we get bitter, we get resentful, and it literally limits for us what is then possible, right? It feeds into itself all the way down that negative spiraling vortex into, all the way to the bottom, to the depths of the earth.
It's endless, the things we can then justify, like, well, I don't need to get out of bed. Well, I don't need to eat right. I don't need it. And all these things that just make us more depressed.
Yes.
It like you said, it becomes a spiraling thing because we don't even want to look at the good things. Because if I look at the good things, then I got to look at myself and realize I'm not grabbing that good thing. I'm not using that good thing.
Yes.
And when you're depressed, the last thing you want to do is look at yourself. But that is the first thing that's going to change anything.
Yeah, I love that. And it puts that responsibility back on us. Like we can no longer say, okay, I am a victim of the circumstances in my life. But it's like,
Hmm.
okay, well, yeah, the circumstances have happened. Here we are. And you've got everything you need to work your way out of it. It's like, what's that switch? What's that's going to change that? And what I hear for you, which I find to be universally across the board, is gratitude. The
Yeah.
minute we can start to find those things to be grateful for, it's like you explained, like it's like this wash. If you
Hmm.
can just grab onto that little thread of gratitude and start yanking on it, it's like the rest of it just showers down
Yeah.
on us. And you're like, oh wow, like look at all this stuff that I have to be grateful for. Like, wow.
Yeah. And and this is going to sound awful, but I was angry at Osama bin Laden. Like that's the level of enemy I had in my life. Like this guy that perpetrated the worst mass killing in American history on U.S. soil. Like that was my enemy. Like how could I possibly fight that guy?
Right.
But I wasn't fighting that guy. But that was the thing in my head. Like, well, if he hadn't done that, then I would be in this completely different situation, and blah, my life would all be better.
Yeah.
Osama bin Laden,
Yeah.
like if anyone had a huge enemy that had to, that I could point at and fight at, like that's the guy. But that wasn't my enemy. My enemy was my own resentfulness and ingratitude and lack of wanting to change. It was me. I was my enemy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really powerful because think about how many of us, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have experienced this or may even be in the situation now where, yeah, it's like we've got all these gripes about everything else outside of us, literally
Hmm.
things that we don't have much control over. I mean, look at politics these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
How much
We hear it all
control
day,
we
every day. Yeah.
have. But we look at these things and yet it does, like we can just fall into the pattern where it's like our scapegoat, right? And then we don't
Mhm.
have to take the personal for responsibility for the things that we have in our lives that we can have some control over, the changes that we can actually make. It's kind of like what you said, right? Like Aviate, get back in control, stop blaming
Exactly.
everybody and everything else, right? And then navigate. So figure out where you're wanting to go. It's what you said, right? I'll let you.
Yeah.
Where do we go from there? How do we take that? Because what you just said falls right into that.
Yeah. I mean, again, Aviate is specifically when the plane is having an emergency situation. Say I've lost an engine or I've lost my screens or, I got some red light flashing. The first thing I do is put my hands on the control airplanes.
Yeah.
And I make sure the plane is safe and and we do that because in the past we learned this the hard way. And unfortunately in aviation, we have a term, it's called tombstone training. We learn because people die.
Mm.
And one thing they noticed in aviation over and over again is when there was emergency, the pilots would go, oh, let me focus on this emergency. And no one was flying the plane. And the plane would very slowly, gently lose control. It could fly into a mountain. It could crash in the ground,
Right.
stall, stop. The wind is not going over the wings fast enough to keep it in the air, and it's called a stall, and the plane just drops out. There's all these distractions that keep us from flying the plane. And in our lives, we have that same problem.
Mm.
Whether it's the social media, some of these are good distractions. Like, social media is great. So I stay connected with my friends and family and I see what's in their life. So when I bump into a friend, I'm like, hey, how's Kelly doing? I see she's doing great at cheer. Like, that's fun. That's great.
Yes.
But it can be a distraction from what we should be doing as well. And then there's the other distractions like, oh, politics. Oh, well, if that person had won the election, like my life would be better. Or if that person hadn't won the election, my life would be better. Or if inflation was this instead of that, then we'd be doing something. Well, you can't control that. So focus on what you can control and not get distracted with all the red flashing lights. Okay, we got inflation. We got this person. Like, what can I do in my family, in my community to make the situation better?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then the communication piece too is really important. And I think that is another thing. that, I mean, I know you work a lot with parents and young men and boys, and I'm sure that that's a really big piece, right? That whole communication piece.
It's communicating is probably the most difficult thing of all. Even from a pilot aspect to between me and my wife, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, but I said I was going to do this. And she's like, no, you didn't. But at least I am. And she, how many times we had that conversation of, I just had it yesterday, something very similar. I can't remember what it was, but it was one of those, like, I said I was going to do it. She's like, no, you didn't. I'm like, I'm doing it today. It's like these awkward conversations we have between spouses.
We all have, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, it's normal. It's fine. Like, that's life. We sort that out. And then, I got 2 teenage girls and talk about communication problems. Like, I've never been a teenage girl trying to talk their language, and they're saying stuff like Riz and skibbity, and I don't even know these weird words the kids say these days. And
I don't know those words either, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's like this new catchphrase. I don't know. I think it's starting to fade now because I hear mom and dad using it. And the coolness of it is ending as soon as you hear a mom say it. So they will be fading quickly. So yeah, communication is hard in the family. As pilots, we communicate very precisely. We say exactly what we need to say and nothing else. And we say it very clear and succinctly. I'm sure we've all heard on the radio pilots say niner. Everyone's like, why don't you say 9? Why do you say niner? Well, over a radio, 9 and 5 sound very, very similar. So someone very smart came up with the phrase niner. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, niner. Yeah. And we never say 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's always 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3 to eliminate any confusion. It's all about being very, very precise. And again, we don't say more than we have to say. It's just that short little phrase. Most radio communications between me and other pilots or me over air traffic control, it's 3 seconds. That's about it.
Yeah.
And that's on purpose. So you don't overload someone with so much information that they're like, wait, what do you say now? You got to repeat it. And blah, like, I'll do 3 seconds. They respond another 3 seconds. We break it up. That communication needs to be so precise. It's critical. It's life-threatening information we're giving back and forth to each other.
Yeah. And think about that, because that applies to us in life in general when we're communicating with other people. Because sometimes we end up going off and putting, a lot of times it's drama that we're putting around our communications, or it's opinions that we're putting around our communications that then impact our relationships, sometimes not in the greatest of ways. What's the, I forget who said it. But they had written in a letter, sorry, I wrote you this long letter, but I didn't have the time to make it.
I want to say that was between Jefferson and Adams. I could be mistaken, but yeah.
I don't remember, but it really puts into perspective. Yeah, for us to kind of boil down what is that clear, succinct message that we want to actually communicate, so that we're getting to the heart of whatever, let's say it's a conflict that we're having. So we're getting to the heart of the conflict, leaving out the drama. It does take a little bit, it takes some extra time. It takes that stepping away. It takes us like honing in on, okay, well, what is it exactly that I want? Or what is it exactly that I want to communicate?
Yeah, when I'm working with parents and their sons, communication is, again, that's the third thing we want to focus on. It's very critical. But it's the third thing, but in our instincts it's the first thing we want to do. Your son's in trouble. He walks through the door. You're like, something isn't right. He did something. Let's say he broke curfew. He said, you need to be home at 11, and he rolls in at 11:45. And the first thing you want to do is start yelling and screaming at him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
that doesn't save the peace, does it?
No. And what you also do, a lot of times what I hear parents doing, and I'm guilty of it as well, is you don't just bring up that. You bring up like 7 other things. And you didn't take out the trash before you left. Yes. And you're supposed to help your sister with their homework before you left, and you didn't do that. And then yesterday you were late then too. And you bring up blah, blah, blah. And you dump all this information onto your son. It's information. I mean, you boil it down to all it is information. And they're going to be quickly overwhelmed. And what do we do when we get overwhelmed? We get very, very defensive. Yes. And defensive leads to anger. And now you're like, well, I don't even know why you're arguing with me. And yet you came at him with all this information and this tone. Like, what else are you supposed to do? Cower in the corner and start crying? Like, is that the reaction you want?
Yeah.
How about when he walks through the door, you go, hey, what's going on? That's it. Let's start with a question. Does he even know he's late? Maybe he thought it was midnight and it's 11.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just a miscommunication. Hey, what's going on? Oh, nothing. I'm like, oh, okay. He doesn't know he's late. He doesn't know.
Right.
We could avoid this whole huge argument just by that question right there. Hey, what's going on? Oh, nothing. Okay, well, curfew is 11 and it's 11:45. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay. Well, we need to communicate better. Okay, let's solve that. We solve the problem right there. We don't need to bring up the homework. We don't need to bring up the chores. We don't need to have them in tears going to have this huge argument. Let's just start with a little curiosity and some clear, concise communication. And if you think he's lying to you, well, then that's a whole nother argument. Oh, well, he told me 11, but I'm going to say 12. I'm going to try to get out of this. Well, that's a different argument. That's a different conversation. But let's start with some clear, concise communication and just some curiosity, like, hey, it's supposed to be 11.
Yeah.
And we nip it in the bud right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because it's so easy for us to, some of it comes from our assumptions. Some of it comes from us, finding everything we can to make the other person wrong, essentially, right? Like build up that evidence and support so we're justified in our anger, in our upset. But, I was just thinking as you were saying it, you think about what we do, like you said, it's like if we throw all that anger, what do you expect is going to happen? The person becomes defensive and then there's some sort of consequence to that. If we take that, we relate it back to our health, it's no different, right? If we bombard our body with toxicity, if we bombard our body with illness or injury or, whatever is having a negative impact, like our body starts to act out the same way that we do, if we are emotionally overwhelmed as well.
It's so funny you mentioned that because it's weird how whenever I get super stressed, things are going on at home. I got a lot of, a rough trip. We hit a lot of weather and I got to de-ice the airplane. And it's just been a tough trip. Maybe I had emergency. I get home, I'm sick.
Yeah.
I get sick. It's the weirdest thing. And it's just like my body, all the energies, all the self-defense has been drained out because it's just been bombarded. And the next trip, I'm probably calling in sick because I got some nasal infection. I got some ear infection. I can't fly with my ears plugged. So,
right.
And it's crazy how I'll even predict with Adrian. I come home like, that was a rough trip, probably getting sick.
Oh no.
And after 30 years of it, it's just, that's just the way it is. Because like, as you say, when we're bombarded, and here's the other problem is when I have a rough trip like that, am I eating very well? No, I want those yummy comfort foods.
Right.
So I'm putting toxins in my body and it becomes that other kind of spiral that we were talking about earlier, where it's not emotional, but it's a physical spiral. I'm cheating on my workouts. I'm cheating on my diet. I'm starting to do all these other things because these stressors are building up. Yeah. And the thing that would help me resist those stressors are the exact opposite things I'm doing, like proper exercise and nutrition and drinking enough water and doing all those things that are difficult to do on the road as it is.
Yeah.
And then I think that's really the problem is it's already difficult and I'm doing difficult things. Mm-hmm. That's where the discipline needs to kick in.
Yeah, exactly. I love this. That could mean because, so if we take a step back, right, a lot of stress that we experience in life, right, we can go back to that whole personal responsibility thing. Like, okay, so how do we reduce our stress in our life? Well, we up the ante on our personal responsibility, right? We take control over those things, like you said, like your exercise and your diet, but we take control too over our conversations. We take control over, the little gremlin voices that go on in your head that are kind of making everything explode, right? Because then we end up in this cycle of stress and anxiety and panic and overwhelm. And all of that just starts to run away.
Yeah. And, that's just like flying a plane in emergency. When one thing starts to go wrong, another thing goes wrong. It's never one thing that brings the plane down. They call it a chain of events. It's 10 to 12 things to make a plane crash I took a course on studying how planes crash in college. And if I remember right, it was 10 to 12 links in the chain of events that will bring a plane down. And if any one of those is broken, the plane doesn't crash.
Right.
And that perfectly links to health, both mental and physical. And that's something I speak to the boys a lot about, is having mental and physical durability. That's a phrase I use a lot with them, is having that durability. I don't like the term mental health for these boys, because it starts to sound like some sort of medical, like, oh, you're counseling me or you're a therapist. I'm like, I'm not a therapist, I'm a pilot. We got to have mental and physical durability, because stuff happens and you got to be able to take it.
Yeah, I love that. When you talk about, so just to reiterate, right, your work is really focused on helping these boys and helping families and helping them work through the stressors that come with young men growing up, and how that impacts everybody around them and themselves. So when you talk about mental durability, what are you training these boys in specifically, right? Like, how are you working with these boys to start to understand that mental durability piece? Because I think whether we're boys or whether we're girls, or no matter who we are, right, you can take that context of what you're doing with those young men and have it be really relatable to all of us for all of life.
Yeah, well, the one of the first things I teach them is gratitude. You got to be grateful.
Yes.
It's so easy for them to look at mom and dad. Mom and dad should be doing this for me, and they shouldn't have done this to me. And if only I had what so and so had over there, down the street, or my friend, or this kid that I know at school. I don't even know that well, but it looks like his life is better than mine. You don't really know, but we all like to make assumptions about other people.
Right.
And no, you can't control that. Aviate, dude. Aviate yourself. Like, you can just control you. Let's start with some gratitude for what you do have, because as of now, all my boys that I work with are here in the United States. And my goodness, if you're in the United States, you have a lot to be grateful for.
Yeah.
What a wonderful, wonderful place to be born. How lucky are you? And it is pure luck.
Yeah.
It is pure luck. I didn't do anything to deserve to be born in America versus, Somalia.
Right.
Like, it's pure luck. I'm just a lucky guy. And I was born into a wonderful family. That's luck. I'm grateful for that. I didn't do it. I didn't deserve it. I'm lucky, and I'm grateful. And so we start with gratitude, because, again, gratitude makes you aware of your resources. And as soon as you're aware of your resources, when things start to hit you, you have that durability. I can lean on mom. Mom is a resource. And that's what I talk to moms and dads. Like, when your son comes to you with a problem, let's not attack him. Let's not make him feel bad for it, because guess what happens next? He starts hiding things.
Right.
So when he comes at you with a problem, let's come at it with a positive attitude, even if it's something bad, even if it's like, hey, I got caught cheating at school on a test. Okay. That's not good. Let's figure out how to resolve this with the teacher. Let's get you some tutoring. Let's figure out, let's solve this problem. And now we're creating that durability of like, oh, I had this problem and I have people around me that can help me. There's 4 people I tell these boys, or types of people I tell these boys to surround themselves with, and it applies to everybody. Everyone needs a mentor, someone that's further down the path that you want to take. Everyone needs a coach, someone that holds you accountable for what you're doing. You need a trainer, someone that's trained specifically in trying to do the thing that you're trying to do, and they have a program for it. And then you need a team. You need people around you, peers around you that are on the same path, same level of you, that you can go to and like, I'm struggling with this, or like, I'm struggling with this too. Let's work together on this. Or I struggled with that last week and I figured out this is what you got to do. They're right there in the fight with you. And that creates that durability as well. And again, it's relationships, it's resources. And when all of us feel like we have that group around us, like, we're unstoppable. No matter what hits us, like, oh, I'll talk to that person over there and they know someone, and then boom, I got that problem solved.
Yeah. I love that too, because it's like every problem is solvable. We've just got to figure out how to solve that problem. And sometimes that means that we need to rely on others. We need to have community. We need to be able to tap into, like you said earlier, the resources.
Yeah. And as great as Chat GPT is and Google is, like, that's great. You need people. You need people. You need actual people that breathe air in your life to give you some advice and some help and even just support, just to listen to you. Like, I'm really struggling with this, and wow, okay, and give you some compassion at time and aren't solving your problems. And one more thing that popped in my mind when he said, there's a solution to your problems. Every solution has a trade-off. Yes. Every solution has a trade-off. There's no perfect solution. And that's a thing that I see parents get stuck with, or boys get stuck with. Well, here's a solution, but what about this and this? I'm like, yeah, but weigh it against this over here. This is solving the problem. Sure, there's still some other problems. Like, he needs to go to bed earlier. Well, I don't want to have a big fight with him every single night and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, the trade-off is you're probably going to have a little bit of a fight, a little bit of an argument with him for a while. But he's going to get more sleep. He's going to go to school better. He's going to feel better. He's going to ultimately be healthier. Well, I just don't want to have that fight. Okay, well, then he's going to be more tired. He's probably not going to eat as well. His grades are going to be like, there's a trade-off to every solution. And quit looking for that perfect solution. Pick the best solution.
Yeah. Progress, not perfection.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And that's so hard these days because we get to look online and we get to look at all Instagram. Everyone's like, oh, well, that person has this perfect little life. Clearly they figured out, and like, we don't know that. We don't know what their problems are.
Exactly.
And with influencers, they portray that too. I follow influencers. They're like, oh, we just do this and this and this, and it all works out. Like, no, there's trade-offs behind there that you're not talking about.
Like, oh, my life is perfect. Let's be real, right? Nobody's life is perfect. We all have the things that we deal with. And that's why it's so important that we develop these skills that you are training us in essentially right now, so that we've got tools in our tool chest that allow us to go through life having just that little extra bit of ease to reduce that stress and that overwhelm and that pressure. Now, I know, Jeremy, so you work with boys and then you work with families. What would you say are some of the number one, or what is the number one words of wisdom that you have for parents to help them reduce the stress of parenthood?
That's a great question. The number one advice I give to parents is get curious.
I like that.
Stop feeling like you know what the right answer is, because you don't.
Yes.
Your right answer when you were 17 is not their right answer when they're 17. Get curious. Ask them lots of questions. Don't project your expectations on them. You're like, well, if you went to college, you could have this degree and you could do this and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, maybe that would be great. Get curious. Maybe college isn't the right thing for them. And that's a really hard thing for parents to realize. That maybe my son's not going to go to college or whatever the thing is, or he's going to go to college. And he wants to change degrees. Well, we agreed you were going to be a doctor. Well, yeah, I kind of want to be a school teacher. I'm going to go into education. Get curious about why they're making those decisions. And you're going to quickly realize there's some logic behind it, that they're not as dumb as you think. They're not as immature as you think. And sometimes there's a lot of immaturity behind it that you do need to get to, but you're never going to get to it if you just stick your thumb on them. Like, no, you need to do this and this. Like, okay, one exercise I learned from Ben Hardy, the author of many, many great books.
Yes.
The 7 whys.
Yes.
So why are you going to do that? Well, we're going to do this because of this. Well, why are you going to do that? You're going to do that. Yes. And oftentimes you only need to get down to like 2 or 3 before you get to the real reason someone is making a decision that they're making.
Yes.
And that starts with curiosity. Like my daughter just told us last week, like she's not going to go to college. She got accepted at college. And we talked to her about it, and she wants to go on a mission for a church instead. So she's going to be leaving on a church mission for 18 months. Next October, she wants to start in September to go to college and then leave 6 weeks later, when she could leave 6 weeks later for this mission.
Right.
And she's like, if I go to college for a year, I could have been a year into my mission by then. Right. Like, oh, that makes sense. But me and Adrian were like, no, you go to college. college is the better thing for you. And then I'm like, well, got to take my own advice here. Why would you like to do that?
Yeah.
Some very good answers. I'm like, hey, that makes sense. And in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter one way or another? No. She's going to be great. And it's her decision. And she's 18. And time for me to start to let go a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, and both decisions are great. They're both great. Super proud of her either way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's coming to that place, I think, as parents. It's part of that letting go. And then also looking at our children as, as human beings, as people who are thinking and processing and have their own thoughts, opinions, feelings, and all of that. I mean, once we get past that little toddler phase, they do become their own person. Sometimes in their toddler phase, they are their own person.
Yes, I had one of those. Wow. Yeah. Nothing's more difficult than a toddler with an opinion.
Yeah.
There's no reasoning with that at all. Like, this is what's happening.
Nope. That brain takes over. There's no off switch. It just goes.
But yeah, these kids, they need to grow up. They need to make these decisions. And honestly, isn't that what we're trying to do? Is teach them how to make decisions. And part of them making decisions is sometimes making some dumb decisions and being there to help clean up the mess. Not clean up the mess, but help.
Yeah, right. So, they've got to go through their own experiences. I mean, that is, in fact, the name of your company, right? Raising Great Fathers?
Yeah. We came to that fairly recently. Before the program was named Command Your Life, and that's still the program we put the boys through, is Command Your Life. Like, literally take command, stop putting on everyone else to take charge of you. Yes. Command Your Life. But the overarching program is Raising Great Fathers, and that's what we work with the parents on, because we want these boys to grow up and be great fathers.
Yeah.
There's so many times we talk to the boys, we're like, well, what do you want to do for a living? Like, who cares? Like, that's great. My greatest accomplishment isn't flying airplanes. My greatest accomplishment is my children.
Yes. Yes.
If I had to choose between my kids and my job, like, that's a no-brainer.
Right. Exactly.
It's not even like, a millisecond of hesitation.
Right.
And yet my whole life prior to being a father was like, I'm going to be a pilot. I'm going to be a pilot. I'm going to be a pilot. Like, it's this identity that I built up, and I am a pilot. I'm proud of that. But I'm most proud of being a father. And that's how all these boys are eventually going to be as well.
Right.
We want them to grow up and be great fathers. And there's so many father groups out there online right now. I see them. I'm a member of a couple, Facebook groups of these groups trying to help fathers now. And I'm like, that's great. What if we could have helped them before they were fathers? What if we could have prevented a lot of problems? Just like you do with health, with nutrition and proper exercise and the proper supplements. Instead of creating the disease or treating the disease, let's prevent the disease. Instead of creating a situation where we have divorced fathers, let's prevent the divorce from happening. Instead of creating a situation where these guys are overworking and neglecting their children, let's make them realize they need to prioritize their family over their career.
Right.
And prevent those problems, because nothing will screw up a kid worse than having a bad relationship with their father.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of studies on this, read a lot of books on this. If you go into any prison, over 90% of those men in that prison did not have a good relationship with their father, if a relationship at all. If a boy does not have a relationship with their father, they are much, much more likely to commit suicide.
Wow.
And I know that firsthand. My best friend, who did not have a good relationship with his father, his parents divorced when he was very, very young. He committed suicide when he was 19 years old.
Wow.
I mean, he fits that statistic to a T. When I started learning and reading into this, like, oh my gosh, Stuart, like, we should have seen this coming.
Yeah.
It was completely predictable, but we just didn't know. So if we can get better fathers, we're going to get better kids.
Yeah.
And these boys, when they're 12, 14, 18, well, they need to think about being a father at that point and not waiting like, oh, I have a baby now. What do I do? Like, not the time to try to figure it out. And yet we all kind of joke like, oh, the kid didn't come with the manual. Like that's the joke. Yeah, it didn't come with the manual, but we come with the manual. We can set up our own manual. We can set ourselves up to be a successful adult human being, father, mother, before the child arrives in our arms.
Yes.
And have a plan for that. And one thing I talk to these boys a lot about is, who are you going to marry? There's no more important decision than that.
Yeah. Yes.
And once we kind of define that, and it goes well beyond looks, obviously. They want her to be beautiful, however they define beauty. But I want her to have an education. I want her to be able to have confidence. I want her to be competent in this way. I want her to enjoy the outdoors or riding motorcycles or whatever. Like, great, you are defining who you want your partner to be. Now, who do you need to be to attract that person? Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, yeah, because she's out there.
Yeah.
Is she looking for you? Because right now she's probably not. You're probably not the guy she's looking for. So let's make a little shift here. Like, oh, maybe I do need to get better grades because she's going to want a guy that can support a family and have a nice home and have nice things and go on nice vacations. And yet you pulling solid C's right now. That's not someone she's going to be looking at.
Yeah.
Not to mention just getting the right partner. So we, not 10 years in the marriage, two kids later, when all the stressors hit, we're not really a good match.
Right.
We need to get divorced. Like, you should have found someone else before you got married.
Yeah.
Like, let's figure that out now.
Yes.
So, and it's weird to have these conversations with 14-year-olds. It's so strange because they're like,
these
what are you
things.
talking about? I've never even had a girlfriend. I'm like, yeah, so let's start talking about this now.
Yeah.
Like, let's make your first girlfriend to be your wife, but let's get some of those attributes that you think you want in that girlfriend. Let's start looking at that.
Yeah.
And you can refine from there.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a really awesome conversation. I think there's so many pearls that we have really gone through, things that our listeners can take away and begin to bring forth in their lives, whether they are parents, whether they're not parents. We're all human beings and we're all dealing with these same things. I always ask all of our interviewees, give me 3 top things that you have, 3 action items that our listeners can take on to immediately begin to improve their life.
Oh, good. Well, we went over this. First, get grateful. Gratitude.
Number 1.
Daily gratitude is great.
Yeah.
I'm religious. I pray. Every prayer I say starts with gratitude. I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for this. Before I ask for anything from my Creator, I thank Him for what I got.
Yeah.
Second thing, I'm forgetting what we talked about now. Aviate, take control of your life. Don't let all the distractions, don't let the enemies, don't let the resentfulness build up in you. You control what you can control, regardless of the politics, regardless of the economy. We're all dealing with the same thing. You control you. And the last thing is get curious.
Yes.
Be curious about other people. Stop jumping to conclusions. Stop jumping down people's throats. And I don't think many of us do that.
We're not intentionally. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is an instinct. It's easy.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the easy thing is not the thing we should be doing.
Yeah.
So just take a break. Another thing I talk about in my TEDx talk is saying stand by, which is what we do when we're getting overwhelmed in the cockpit. Things are getting a little crazy. Stand by. Mm-hmm. Everything pauses. We reevaluate. We take in the information we need to take in. And then we get back to work. And we're not just frantically like, oh, we got to go. Like that doesn't lead to good decisions. So something happens. Let's just stand by.
Yes.
Take a break. And then let's get curious and start asking some questions and understanding what's going on around us before we start jumping to conclusions and jumping down people's necks. And give them some grace.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Thanks for
having me.
wisdom and insight. And tell us a little bit more about how people can learn about your program. I'm sure there are moms with sons who are listening who are like, I've got to get my son into this program.
And they are correct. They do.
It's like a lifesaver.
RaisingGreatFathers.com is our website. You can shoot me an email, jeremy.stoker@RaisingGreatFathers.com. I know it's a lot. That's what we came up with. Shoot me an email there. And we got an Instagram, Raising Great Fathers. We got a Facebook page as well. If you just want to kind of dip your toe in and see what we do and what we talk about. So yeah, those are the best ways to get in contact with me. And man, I just love working with teenage boys. It's just, I love flying planes, but to be completely honest, if I could, I would retire today and do this full time. It's just something I thoroughly enjoy. Flying planes is for me. It's fun. Serving other people, serving these boys and watching the changes and watching the parents change. That's for everybody.
Yeah, that's the soul's work. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to all of our listeners for being a part of True Wellness with Dr. D. And we look forward to having you join us next Thursday for our next interview drop. With that, everyone, we'll talk to you soon. This is Dr. D, reminding you to tune into your body, reconnect with what matters, and embrace the journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you next Thursday for the next episode drop.